Ladies and gentlemen, we are so back. That's day one of the World Cup wrapped up, and I honestly could not have asked for much more. So much drama in both of the games. Group A is just absolutely delivering, just like I said it would. Just so closely matched, so fun to watch, and just so many great things throughout their first match. And I'm going to break all of that down in what's going to be our daily World Cup series. Now, throughout these two games, I've been just making notes. I'm going to be doing this throughout the entire tournament, just having a bunch of stuff throughout the game, writing my thoughts and trying to organize them into coherent breakdowns and sentences of everything. But yeah, let's start off with the first game, Mexico versus South Africa. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better way to kick off this World Cup. It's such a great full circle moment between these two nations because obviously Mexico came into South Africa when they hosted the World Cup in 2010. And now, 16 years later, South Africa returns the favor as they come to Mexico, the Estadio Azteca, as they prepare to host their third World Cup. That's just crazy how Mexico's already been at this stage 3 times, but honestly, there's a reason why. They absolutely get it. They know how to put on a World Cup party. They do it better than anyone does in North America, and it's not even close. With all due respect to Canada and the US, this was Mexico's time to shine, and they absolutely delivered. The opening ceremonies were cool. We got to see, obviously, a bunch of different things of Mexican culture and just Latin culture in general. And it was also a nice touch before the game, seeing all of the flags of all of the teams being represented. It kind of gave off like an Olympic vibe. You know what I mean? I know they do something like that similar to the Olympics where they introduce all the countries, they have the flag bearers and everything. They try to do something similar to that, and I think it was a nice touch for sure. Although I will say one moment about the intros, and it's not just applying to the Mexico-South Africa game, it also applies to what's probably going to be all the other games in this tournament. It's the new introduction system where usually you'll have the starting 11s come out and they'll line up in a straight line, one side on each other. They both shake hands straight across. However, this time they try to implement something new with a circle in the middle, and they have all players, not just the starting 11, but also the substitutes, be with each other. Now, I can understand from a team unity perspective that it could be a nice touch for them, having all their players be one rather than just having this hierarchy of subs going to the bench, starting 11 going out there. But at the same time, I just don't think you should be messing with that. Every league and every competition of football does it the same way. I get that this World Cup probably wants to stand out a little bit more. I mean, it is a US World Cup. They want to maybe go a little bit over the top with some things, but I feel like that's just something that's simple enough to where you don't need to change it. And all it really does is just, it drags on the intro because now you have to organize even more flags, even more things on the field. You have all the players. Now all the players have to shake hands. And it's just weird, like just adding more time to the start of the game that already doesn't need to be added. And I would say that's enough of me complaining about things, but I will come back to something a little bit later in the other game that I want to highlight as far as my issues with some of this World Cup already. But let's switch on to the good stuff, all right? We got to talk about the games themselves. Mexico playing at home. I came into this saying that obviously they were going to be under so much pressure as a host nation. I can't even imagine what it must have been like for those players coming out to 80,000 people all wearing green. But they absolutely delivered. You could not have asked for too much of a better performance from the Mexico team today. They came out immediately on the front foot there, pressing hard on the South Africans and really not giving them anything to work with. And for that, I gotta look at South Africa and how they set up their team. In their first World Cup game with everybody watching, they go with a 5 at the back against a team that is very much known for high pressure. That in itself was their first mistake that they made, and that lands solely on their manager. Hugo Broos did the same exact thing in the AFCON against Cameroon, and we all saw how that ended. And instead of changing it up even slightly, he put out the same exact thing, and unsurprisingly, Mexico was able to take advantage of it. It only took 8 minutes for South Africa to commit a terrible error at the back sit hole under so much pressure. A great pass from Lara. And then Julian Quinones with so much confidence coming off the left-hand side, cutting in brilliantly as he put Mexico up 1-0. Now, I want to highlight Julian Quinones because he was absolutely incredible in this game. He's a player that in my notes I've highlighted as a potential World Cup breakout candidate. He's coming off an absolutely incredible season in the Saudi League. He scored 33 goals in 31 games, and it already seems like he's going to go into this World Cup adding to that scoring prowess. Crazy to think that Quinones is 29 years old, playing in his first ever World Cup. And he's already looking like he's going to be a major factor for the Mexican team in this one. And he was easily the best player in this match. He controlled that left side so well, even though times where he drifted off into the center like we saw in that first goal. Even that time in the second half where he tried to beat the keeper from near the halfway line, that just shows how much confidence this guy has. A player like him has already proven that he can be such a game changer, and getting him going for this World Cup will be huge for Mexico, giving them another attacking threat alongside of their aforementioned one in Raul Jimenez. Jimenez had a great chance in the first half that he couldn't put away, but he absolutely made up for that in the second half, scoring a brilliant header as he put Mexico up 2-0. And I also want to highlight Raul Jimenez, but for a different reason. He is honestly one of the best redemption stories I've seen in this sport in the last couple of years. To think that at the beginning of this decade, his career was almost finished after he suffered a horrific head injury. And the fact that not only he's managed to come back from that, but now have this crowning moment in the Azteca, in his home World Cup. It's what every Mexican player would dream of as a kid, and he's living that out in a moment that was almost taken away from him several years before. And to be honest, he and Mexico could have done way more damage in that first game. I highlighted so many different chances that the Mexico team had, and that is an area where getting into these next couple of games against South Korea and Czechia, I kind of worry about Mexico if they have to be more clinical in front of goal. Against South Africa, a team that really weren't providing any kind of threat, Mexico didn't really need to take too many of their chances. But in those other two games and going forward into the knockout stages, they have to be more clinical in front of goal. But we'll see how all of that lines up in their next two games. We could always presume that could be some sort of, first game nerves that these guys have. Again, it's a huge stage, and for the most part, I think they really did well. In particular, I wanted to highlight Mexico's midfield as well. Going into this World Cup, this became one of the big question marks for Mexico. Do they have enough depth and talent in their midfield to really spark something in them? But today, the trio of Lira, Fidalgo, and Gutierrez controlled the game from basically start to finish. Gutierrez was a player that I wasn't too familiar with heading into this tournament, but he really impressed me today. Lira obviously coming up with a big press and turnover, setting up that first goal. And Fidalgo as well, just great stuff from him. No complaints from me so far from the Mexico midfield. That is definitely an area that so far in this first game, they've turned that from a question mark to a potential strength. The fact that those three were able to play as well as they did, and Edson Alvarez was able to come off the bench for them, again, their midfield depth is now starting to become really powerful for them. And even some of their substitutes did really well as well. Shout out to Gilberto Mora, 17 years old coming in, and he looked pretty good. Obviously from the surface, it doesn't really seem like he did much, but again, the kid's 17 years old, and for him to be so composed on each of the times that he had the ball, trust me when I say in this World Cup, as he starts to play into it, maybe get a bigger role, he is going to do some big things. Trust me. But another thing that became the story of this game, especially towards the latter stages of the game, was of course the red cards. It started with Siddle in the 49th minute as he gave everyone a masterclass on how not to defend. I'm sorry, how many times have we seen defenders take down their player in a last man situation? It just can't be defended. I get sometimes you need to save a goal, but in this case, it's just blatantly stupid to do. You're costing your team. It's only a 1-0 game. Now you're down 10 men for the rest of the game in a game that you were already completely terrible in. So Siddle's tournament's probably over. Even if he does come back from that suspension, I doubt he's going to get another game in. And then to add to that, we have Temba Zwane. He came on in the 61st minute, and 20 minutes later, he was sent off. Now, initially, the challenge didn't look terrible from the first glance, but when you started to see it, and obviously when VAR looked at it, you saw a clear hand to the face. And it wasn't just a hand to the face. It was a full physical, he basically slapped him in the face. I mean, that's a red card in basically every situation. A moment of frustration coming out there, and it costed South Africa. They went down to 9-man. But as if that wasn't enough, Cesar Montes joined them for an early trip to the showers. He was sent off in the 92nd minute. Now, unlike the first two, this was completely unfair. I'm sorry. This was not a justified red card. I get that it is a hard challenge. He didn't really go for the ball. He pretty much went for the guy. But in a situation where you look at violent conduct, last man, denying of a goal-scoring opportunity, I'm sorry, I don't see any of that applied to this. I mean, Madao is clearly going wide of his goal. He's probably playing across, not a shot from that situation. And plus you have two other Mexican defenders standing at the top there who are further up than Montez himself. So I just don't understand how that could be claimed as a red card for whether it's denying a goal scoring opportunity last minute, what it was. I don't think any of that applies to that situation, and it's just unfair. What should have been almost a perfect day for Mexico celebrating a 2-0 win, no casualties as of yet. All of a sudden, now you have an experienced defender out for the next game. And that is something you just can't overlook for Mexico heading into their next couple of games, is how they're going to be able to manage this change. Because again, South Africa were not a threatening team. They had barely any touches in their box, and overall, they just didn't present enough of a challenge for me to really grade this Mexican defense enough. The next two games will obviously be much more of that, but again, not having Montez there, it's going to be a huge loss for them. And to add to that, there were periods where, again, Mexico, they weren't perfect in this one. There were times where, particularly after the first water break, they kind of just stood off of all that pressure they were giving off in the first 20 minutes, constantly creating chances. We didn't really see much of that until the last 5 minutes heading into the first half. And then early in the second half, it was the same thing. Mexico really weren't pushing as hard as they were before. Even the crowd was starting to get on them with some booing. But after that, the team just turned eventually, and then obviously that led to Jimenez's goal. But other than that, though, you really couldn't ask much more from Mexico. They took care of business. They got a clean sheet. They got 2 goals on. That puts them in a great position to qualify. Even if they lose their next 2 games, let's say 1-0 each, they've still put 3 points on the board with a positive goal differential. Who I can say the same thing for is obviously South Africa. They've pretty much cooked themselves with this performance. Down 2 players, down 2 goals, and already down on points. It's just not looking good for them. I said in my predictions video heading into this that South Africa just didn't have enough talent to compete with the rest of the teams in their group, and unfortunately that is the case. But it also doesn't help with, again, the way that they were set up in this one. They were set up to fail. Playing a 5 at the back against a team like that in a stage like that, they weren't trying to win the game. Let's be honest, they just weren't. And the keeper, Ronwen Williams, did make a couple of great saves, keeping his team in it for the most part, but that first goal, he's got to have that one back. Going through the legs on that one, not what you want to see for a goalkeeper. Not trying to take anything away from Quinones. His goal was great. The setup was great. Great stuff from him. But for Williams, definitely cost his team a bit on that first goal there, as South Africa just could not recover in the first 10 minutes. So that takes care of that, and now we go on to the second match between South Korea and Czechia. And all I gotta say about this one heading into it was, this game just summarized why the World Cup is so great. You have 2 teams that have modest expectations heading into the tournament, some recognizable faces and players. They're teams from 2 different continents, and they just have everything to play for. You will never see another competition where a game between South Korea and the Czech Republic is as riveting as this one was. In summary, you can only get a game like this, what we saw at the World Cup. For many of the casual fans, the World Cup is usually about seeing the big teams, seeing the big stars. I get all of that, right? That's obviously great. But the World Cup is also seeing matchups like this that you wouldn't get in any other competition. 2 different styles of play as well. It was just such an interesting game from start to finish. And I gotta say, my pre-tournament hype of Korea was absolutely warranted. This team can play. They are so fun to watch. All of the through balls, long balls over the top, just constant chance creation. They put Czechia in a chokehold this game. It was also great to see Heung-min Son back out on the big stage in a World Cup, once again representing his country. He was somebody that I was honestly really impressed by his performance. It's been a while since I've really locked in on Heung-min Son and watched him play, but I gotta say, he still got it. It was a shame to see him not score because he had so many great chances. Loved watching him play throughout this one. He's going to get his moment in this World Cup, surely. But again, you can't ask much more from your captain in that situation. Taking things into his own hands multiple times and just setting the tone for Korea throughout his time on the pitch. But there were periods of this game, and especially in that first half, where we saw some of the areas where Czech Republic could strike on Korea. First of all, you had mistakes. We saw a big defensive mistake. Czechia nearly took advantage of that. But in particular, it was the set pieces and those long throw-ins that really put a lot of pressure under that Korea defense. And it's not like there was much they could do about it. I mean, Czechia is just such a big team. You have guys like Patrick Schick, Thomas Suchek. You have guys that are just absolute man mountains. there's really nothing much you can do because those guys are just going to get their head on the ball no matter what. It's all about just putting your body in front and stopping the trajectory of wherever that ball goes. And we saw a similar amount of pressure from Korea in that start of that second half. Once again, pelting chances towards goal. I gotta give a shout out to Maciej Kovar throughout that first half and the start of that second half. He was absolutely incredible keeping Czechia in that one because it could have easily been out of control at that point. But he kept the minute just in time for, once again, the set piece and the long throw-in to really come back in handy for the Czechs. As it was their captain, Ladislav Krejci, who put them in front with a brilliant header. And at this point, I was just completely shocked. I mean, Czechia were getting dominated throughout the entire game and were completely against the run of play. They find themselves up 1-0. From there, South Korea looked pretty shell-shocked, especially in those first 5 minutes. All of a sudden, all of that attacking pressure just completely stopped. But eventually, it all came back in order as Kang and Lee put in a brilliant through ball, and we watched Im Byung-hwang take home the rest. It was just an incredible display there. The control on the ball and then the chip in, it was just a brilliant, brilliant goal, and absolutely what South Korea needed to find themselves back level with Czech Republic. And it was at this point where the game just started to completely open up. Both sides were just trading blows, and eventually Czech Republic looked to have gotten their winning goal with Tomáš Souček. However, it was taken away for offside. He was just short on that one. But again, we started to see those set plays come in handy for Czechia. That is definitely an area where if you are Mexico or South Africa or any other team that Czech Republic could potentially face in this tournament, you gotta look out for that because, oh man, they are a problem from there. But after that, South Korea just did exactly what they needed to do. They went right up the pitch and came right back with a great chance of their own. Once again, Im Byung-hwang made a great one up the right-hand side, and he set it up beautifully for Hyun Kyun-oh of Besiktas. He put in what would be the winning goal for South Korea. That put them up 2-1. And again, I just want to highlight Im Byung-hwang. He was absolutely incredible this game. He had a really nice spin move in the first half. That's definitely the best bit of skill I've seen so far in this tournament. And then obviously the first goal, just took it upon himself on that one. Just an incredible, incredible performance from him. And he has now quickly become a really key player for this Korea side in that midfield. He was, again, can't ask for much more from him. A goal and an assist. But then after that, we saw probably the best bit of Czechia from the entire game. They really started to put on that pressure. But luckily, Sang-Yu Kim came to the rescue. He saved them multiple times in those last couple of minutes as South Korea were able to complete the comeback win and take a much-deserved 3 points away from that game. Again, not much more to say other than that was just a brilliant display from South Korea. They're going to be so fun to watch in this tournament. They're a team that can really cause a couple scares. And again, this is why the World Cup is just so great. When else are you going to be able to see games like this take place between these two countries? And it'd be so riveting to watch. Shout out to Czechia, though, for the fight that they put up. Even though they were outplayed in this one, they're still a team you do not want to look past in this tournament. We see clearly where they can hurt teams. And again, there's no real stop unless you have players that somewhat match up to their strengths. It's going to be very hard to be able to match up with Czechia in those set piece situations where they just have a clear advantage, at least for today. But I do expect it to be the same thing against the Mexicans and the South Africans and whoever else they play going forward in this tournament. But yeah, Czechia, nothing to scoff at here. I think they could easily bounce back from this. Again, at this point with the third place teams, you really just need one win to put yourself in a great position to advance to the next round. So that's pretty much all what Czechia need to do. They go into that with their next game against South Africa. Big one for them and a big chance to bounce back. And other than that, that's pretty much all I have from day one. I do have actually one more note that I want to mention. It is something new to this World Cup that we all hate, and that is, of course, the hydration break. Well, okay, not the hydration break in the sense of, like, yes, I see why it's a thing. It's important, especially for the hot games. I don't blame that aspect of it. I think that's fine. However, them being turned into ad breaks. I mean, come on. Whenever I would talk about soccer to people that really didn't get it, I would always defend it by saying it's a sport where there's constant action. There's no ads every 2 seconds like the NFL. The games don't take 10 minutes to finish like the NBA. But this World Cup, which of course is being run by the Americans, are completely turning it into an ad bonanza with ad breaks in the first and second half. And that's one thing, okay? I get it. You got to get your things in. You got to make your money, whatever, cool, FIFA, whatever, right? But what really pissed me off today was in the South Korea game. I don't know if this was just a my broadcast thing or if this was for a lot of people's broadcast, but They came back from the commercial break, and all of a sudden, like, South Korea almost scored. Like, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I thought for a second, like, we almost just missed a goal. We just missed an entire build-up to a goal. Yeah, I mean, I get that it happened really fast, but I'm sorry. That just can't happen. That can't happen. That's why these ad breaks are just so bad. Because, again, what if there was a situation where the ad went on for a couple seconds longer, Korea ended up scoring, all of a sudden, we just missed a goal. For what? That's one part that, if that continues on, could really cause some trouble, and that would really bother me if that were to happen in a situation where if a team scores right off there, all of a sudden it's like, what? Like, you just missed the entire goal over some stupid Lay's ad, or I don't know, whatever ads they have for the World Cup, whatever sponsors they have. Just ridiculous. But hey, it's only day one. I'm sure things will get better and worse from here on out. That's all I got for today. Tomorrow's obviously going to be a huge, huge day. Canada playing their first game. I'm going to be there. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And it all goes down from there. It is day one of, I think, 39, 40. I don't know. I haven't exactly counted out the days yet. I'll probably have that number by tomorrow. But yeah, great first World Cup day. Glad to see all the reactions and stuff behind it. Let me know what some of your reactions and thoughts are for all these games. And yeah, it's the first of many. We're here for the ride. Let's play football.